Magellan, in Jerry and Esther's vehicle, says, please return to the highlighted route. Please return to the highlighted route. If they really get off track, Magellan says, when possible, make a legal U-turn. Because Magellan can tell they're not on the track, and you can tell you're not on the track too. That's what your emotions are telling you. The better you feel, the more on the path you are. But you know what happens to so many of you? You think that you want to wait and feel good after you've already received the manifestation of whatever it is you think you want. And we want you to understand you got to get happy on the path, because you're always going to be on the path. We want to tell you something else that we think is very interesting. It annoys you, but we really like it. Well, we don't like it because it annoys you. We just like it. And we'd like you to get over it annoying you, because when you like it like we like it, your life will start going very well. And that is, you will eternally be living, well, we should be fair with you. We all are eternally living life in this crack. That's what life is. It's the crack between what contrast has just caused me to become and where I am in vibrational relationship with what I have become. So let's say that you've been living something and something has happened. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe not enough money came in. Maybe you thought you were going to sell something and it didn't sell. Maybe you overextended yourself. Maybe someone new came into your life and you spent a bunch of money on them and you got overextended. In other words, all kinds of things happened that upset the balance of your financial standing. So here you are and you're feeling, let's say, strong negative emotion. You're really worried about money. And you go to the mailbox and you get that stack of bills and you don't even want to turn your computer on or look at your checkbook because you don't want to face where you're at. You just know, so the bills kind of stack up and you don't open them because you don't want to face it. And you can feel all of that sort of churning within you. Well, in all of that churning and all of that discomfort, and even before, you were launching rockets of desire. And Source has been lining up with all kinds of circumstances and events to bring more money to you. But as you're standing in this place of worry, you're not a vibrational match to what Source has lined up to you. Do you know the millions, the multi-millions of dollars that are being held lovingly for you in vibrational escrow? But because you're over here beating the drum of trauma or worry and complaint and jealousy, you're nowhere near the vibrational match to what you are wanting. You are not a vibrational match to what you have become. What you have become and what you are letting yourself become is the crack. And the reason that we want to say to you that you will be eternally living life in the crack is because as soon as you launch a rocket of desire and you allow yourself to get up to speed with it, the next thing that happens is there is a new vibrational place that you are standing from which you are launching new rockets, which you now must become a vibrational match to, you see. You're not ever going to get it done, and you can't get it wrong. And the reason that you can't get it wrong is because you never get it done. You're always going to be in the place where you can move yourself up this emotional scale into vibrational alignment with who you really are. So here you are, non-physical energy, before your physical birth, and you are one powerful stream of pure positive energy. And then you're born. In the moment that you're born, your consciousness is introduced to the variety of the human earth experience. And in that moment, there is a slight separation of your vibration. That's why you cry when you're born. In other words, it's a bit shocking. You all worry about death. It's birth you should worry about. Death is a piece of cake. In other words, you die, you reemerge into pure positive energy. When you're born, now that's not easy. To come into an environment where people worry, where they don't like each other, where they fuss about things. So here you are, you're born, and you are now not quite the pure positive energy stream that you were. But then you sleep, and you are. You wake up, and you're not. You sleep, and you are. You wake up, and you're not. But you begin to acclimate, and even as that early infant, even when you're awake, you have the very powerful potential. It sort of depends on your environment of being that pure positive energy. But then you grow up and you go to school and they tell you what you're doing wrong and they compare you with one person and another person. And you get more and more separated. The more you try to socialize with your physical world, the more most of you usually lose track of this. Especially since people haven't been keeping you aware that you want to be aware of this. In other words, if when you're born, your mother is aware that you're pure positive energy and she's trying to coax you into that alignment, it's easier. But most people forget pretty soon. And so they're sort of hanging out there on the raw and ragged edge, responding to whatever their environment is showing them. So then you grow up, You have ups and downs. You go to sleep, you come into alignment. You wake up, you're out of alignment. You appreciate, you get back into alignment. You criticize, you get out of alignment. You love someone, you get into alignment. You hate someone, you get out of alignment. You watch a movie that feels wonderful, you get into alignment. You watch CNN, you get out of alignment. In other words, and then you learn to meditate, you get into alignment. In other words, you live life and sometimes get out of alignment. You croak, you go back into alignment. So you get the sense of this. You have the potential of maintaining that alignment once you know what you're looking for. So what you're looking for is alignment. And what alignment feels like is love and appreciation and joy. It feels like passion. It feels like freedom. It's the perception, really, of freedom. And we use the word perception because you're so free you can choose bondage. No one can vibrate for you, so you're doing it all to you, whether you like it or not, whether you like what you're doing or not, you are doing it all to you. But on that end of the scale, it feels like freedom. On the other end of the scale, which feels like fear, it feels like despair, that is your perception of no power. That's your perception of no freedom. That's the feeling of disempowerment. The way you feel is your indication of where you are on this scale. Now, what's this scale? This scale is this crack that we're talking about, isn't it? It's that vibrational relativity between who you really are and not just who you were before you were born, and not just who you were the day you were born, who you have become as a result of being in this masterful, wonderful experience where life is causing you to become more. So have we made the point? You can't not keep up to speed with who you have become and ever feel good. In other words, life can't cause you to become this and you ever feel really good when you're over here beating the drum of this. You got to get up to speed with who you are. So how do you do that? You recognize that the way you feel, that the emotions that you feel are your indicator of how you're doing on this emotional scale. You recognize that when you make a statement and really mean it, nothing is more important than that I feel good, and then you make the effort to feel good, then you can get up the emotional scale on any subject that you want. And it's an interesting thing. We really want you to realize that you might see someone who's experiencing the trauma of the death of someone that they love, who's in despair. And then you might see someone else who seems to have everything in the world going right, who is feeling despair over something that seems utterly insignificant to you. You want to say, get a life, for heaven's sakes. Why are you so worried about that? And we want to say to you, lovingly, mind your own business. Because you don't know what anybody else is doing with their scale. In other words, you have no way of knowing what the vibrational relativity is for anyone else, just like no one else has any way of knowing what it is for you. Esther had an interesting experience this week. They're not in San Antonio very often. They're gone mostly. And when they come home, it's always so fun to see the progression on the projects and that sort of thing. And they have refurbished a little guest cottage that they have actually moved into while they're in the process of figuring out what they're going to do about building a new house. And they're not there very much, but when they're there, they're really enjoying it. And one of the most recent wonderful things was a beautiful patio was built with beautiful stones all around this little guest house. It's really very lovely. And so they came home. It looked so pretty. Jerry and Esther just raved about it, and it's always the newest thing that gets their attention, and that was the newest thing. And they were there a couple of days, and then Esther went outside, and she noticed that they were badly stained, sort of in places. She couldn't figure out what had happened, and it turned out that the oak had stained them, and for a little while, the landscape architect master said that he surmised that what had happened was they had fertilized, and then the fertilizer, when the sprinklers came on, had caused puddles, and then some chemical in the fertilizer had permanently stained the stone. Well, Esther felt very sad about this because she only got to see it in its perfect form for one day. It seemed wrong that someone who should know better would make such a mistake. So she said to Jerry, what are our alternatives? And Jerry said, we could tear it out and replace it, which seemed drastic. Or we could live with it, which seemed unfair. And Esther tried to put her mind on other things, but she got in quite a funk as she kept looking out the window at it. And so she took her bucket and her little metal brush, and she went out and brushed it to see if she could make a difference. Maybe they just didn't try hard enough, she thought. She made no difference at all and got feeling even worse. And then she got thinking about how it should be different than that, and how much they pay those gardeners to take care of all of that, and how they should know better, and that even if the one who's sprinkling the stuff doesn't know better, somebody who's watching him sprinkle it should know better, and whoever sent him should know better, and somebody should call somebody, because there's something very wrong about this. And strange as it may seem to anyone looking at Esther, who surely has the closest thing to a perfect life of anyone that you know, Esther began feeling powerless. She began thinking things like, I can't stay home, and I can't find the people to watch the people to keep things like this from happening. And then she started worrying about the beautiful stones over at the center building. Really beautiful stones. Stones that were hauled in with big cranes. Stones that cannot be easily replaced. And she started out in joy, saw the rocks, went to frustration, scrubbed them with her brush, went to overwhelmment, made a few phone calls, went to anger, and finally, by the end of the day, was in the feeling of utter powerlessness. And Jerry is doing his best to stay clear of Esther. Because he can't fix it, and he can't make her feel differently than she's feeling. And now Esther is mad at Jerry for staying clear of her. She thinks he should at least have the courtesy to suffer with her, or to agree with her that her suffering is appropriate. He wouldn't even give her that. So Esther said, as she took her computer, there is a new process in the Amazing Power book that says, what has happened, the contrasting experience that has happened. So Esther made a computer program for herself with 4 fields. What's happened is, and she made the statement very clear, much as we have just given it to you. Someone stained my rocks, they've ruined it, they've made it not look good, and not only that, but other bad things could happen in the same way, because I'm not here to watch what everybody does. And then she put, what is the desire that is born out of that? And her desire was that she not care. And then she thought, no, that's not my desire. I don't want to stop caring. I don't want to lower my standards. All right, my desire is that I don't feel so bad about things. My desire is that I surround myself with people that really know what they're doing. My desire is really that I'm able to maintain my balance regardless of these kind of silly things that are happening. That was really the bottom line of the desire that was born within her. And then the next field says, and what are the emotions that I'm feeling? And Esther wrote powerlessness. And then she wrote overwhelmment. It feels like overwhelmment, powerless. So then she said to Jerry, who had stuck his head inside for a moment, I'm going to work on my computer for a little while because my thoughts are killing me. And she was being a little over dramatic, but she knows the power of thought, and she could feel how bad she felt over something that anybody outside of her would have said was ridiculous. But then they don't get to choose, do they? Because they don't know how she dreamed it, how she saw it, how she visualizes it when she's driving down the road, how she wants it to be. Nobody gets to decide what she gets to want. She gets to decide, but nobody can control how she feels but her. And she couldn't dig the stones up, and she couldn't take the chemical back, and she couldn't scrub it off with her brush. She couldn't do anything other than the only thing that you can ever do anyway was to change the way she felt. And at that point, she wasn't even sure she could do that. So she sat there on a sofa in the cottage with her computer, and now she's in the 4th field, which is closing the vibrational gap, which means just talk until I feel better. Do anything I can do, find any thought that I can find that makes me feel the slightest bit better. And the very best thing about feeling so bad is that it's easy to find things that make you feel better. So Esther sat there, and she looked around the room that she was sitting in. And right before her is an old fireplace that's been there for many years. It was built with this old house. And on the face of the fireplace, in fact, on both sides of it, but she could only see one side, is a magnificent mantle that was carved out of a piece of manzanita. And it was so heavy that it took 3 men to lift it. And so the designer designed big metal sculptures that come out of the fireplace and hold it up. It is a work of art, prettiest thing that Esther's ever seen on an old fireplace.